Hello guys, welcome to the movie recap review. Happy watching.
She must be. I think she's here. I think she's fucking here.
At the start of the movie, we are introduced to Zoe, a cheerful and lively young woman preparing to meet her fiancé. Her mother gifts her a car for the journey, reminding her to be cautious before bidding her goodbye. Zoe reassures her mother, saying, "Don't worry, I'll get there safely," and sets off, filled with excitement. Zoe, who loves taking selfies, captures one during her drive and sends it to her fiancé to update him on her location. Along the way, she encounters an old man selling handmade crafts by the roadside. She admires his work but doesn't linger, eager to continue her trip. While driving, Zoe becomes distracted by her phone. Suddenly, an injured man stumbles onto the road, forcing her to slam on the brakes. She narrowly avoids hitting him. Shocked, she looks out and sees the man collapse, only to notice a gang of men aggressively chasing him. As the gang moves toward her, Zoe, driven by compassion, quickly gets out of her car and helps the injured man into her vehicle. She attempts to flee, but the gang catches up before she can escape. They surround her, mocking and threatening her. To Zoe's devastation, the gang kills the injured man right in front of her eyes. Terrified and desperate, Zoe tries to run, but the gang's leader, Trey, shoots her in the leg. The bullet sends her collapsing to the ground. The gang takes Zoe to their hideout and ties her to a bed. They subject her to relentless torture, leaving her in unbearable pain and despair. Meanwhile, Zoe's fiancé grows increasingly worried as hours pass with no word from her. Concerned for her safety, he examines the last selfie she sent, noticing a distinctive signboard in the background. Using this clue, he determines her approximate location and contacts the police, urging them to act quickly. Back at the hideout, Trey, the gang leader, continues to torment Zoe. During her captivity, Trey reveals a horrifying family legacy. He boasts that his grandfather wiped out an entire Native American tribe. To prove his claim, Trey displays a collection of skulls, the remains of the tribe members, including their leader. He picks up one skull and tells Zoe it belonged to the tribe's commander. Zoe is horrified, both by the gruesome display and Trey's cold pride in his family's atrocities. As the night wears on, the gang celebrates with heavy drinking and laughter, their cruelty unabated. One of Trey's men suggests it's time to kill Zoe. Trey, however, refuses, insisting he isn't done tormenting her. The gang decides to gamble on Zoe's fate with a card game. Trey's friend wins the bet and takes a knife, ready to kill her. In the meantime, despite her injuries and pain, Zoe manages to untie herself. Summoning every ounce of strength, she escapes from the room and runs into the darkness. Her desperate attempt at freedom is short-lived. Trey's friend notices her escape and quickly catches up to her. In a brutal and merciless act, he stabs Zoe multiple times. She collapses to the ground, succumbing to her wounds. The old man, who was walking with his dog, comes across Zoe's lifeless body. Saddened, he carries her back to his place. Using herbs, he prepares a special medicine and applies it to her wounds. It is then revealed that the old man belongs to the tribe Trey's grandfather destroyed. The old man performs a ritual with ancient magic to bring Zoe back to life. During the ritual, Zoe's body rises into the air and a spirit enters her. When she awakens, her appearance has changed. Her eyes are black, and her face looks terrifying. Overcome by the dark energy inside her, Zoe attacks the old man, but he manages to make her faint. Meanwhile, Zoe's fiancé arrives in the area and checks into a hotel. Later, Zoe regains consciousness and wanders into the city. She finds a public phone and calls her fiancé, telling him she's alive and safe. Overjoyed, he tracks her location from the call and rushes to find her. Zoe then spots a police officer and approaches him for help, but to her shock, he's one of Trey's gang members. Anger overtakes her, and her eyes turn black again. She follows him to a club, where the gang member is stunned to see her alive. The gang member tries to attack Zoe, but she strikes first, brutally killing him by tearing out his intestines. Another gang member attempts to shoot her, but Zoe knocks him out with a chair. When Zoe's fiancé arrives at the public telephone location, he sees police officers there. He asks one of them about Zoe, but the officer tells him that a murder recently took place there, and the person he's looking for isn't at the scene. Zoe's fiancé explains that she called him from this location just an hour ago. The officer responds dismissively, saying, "I'll handle your case later." Meanwhile, Trey and his gang arrive at the same spot. When they find the dead body of their friend, Trey becomes furious, unable to figure out who killed him. Zoe's fiancé approaches the gang, shows them a picture of Zoe, and asks if they've seen her. The gang members tell him to leave immediately, but when he mentions the phone call from an hour ago, they are shocked. Realizing something is wrong, they decide to kill him, but the police officer intervenes, forcing them to back off. Zoe, meanwhile, wakes up in a shed. She notices a door opening on its own, revealing a room filled with tools and weapons. She picks up a bow and some arrows before leaving the shed. At the same time, Trey and his gang visit the spot where they buried Zoe's body. To their horror, her body is missing. Confused, they wonder where it could have gone. One of the gang members, who stabbed her, suggests that a wild animal might have taken the body, insisting it's impossible for her to have survived. But Trey isn't convinced. Worried about the police, the gang decides to pack their belongings and leave their homes. As one of Trey's friends steps out of his house, he notices arrows sticking out of his car. Terrified, he leaves a voice message for Trey, saying he feels like Zoe is nearby. Moments later, Zoe appears and starts shooting arrows at him. She keeps firing until he collapses and dies. Hearing the message from his friend, Trey rushes to the scene. Trey arrives and finds his friend dead. Meanwhile, Zoe notices her body rotting, with insects crawling on her skin. Horrified, she goes to the old man and asks for help. The old man explains that he found her body in a grave. She was already dead when he performed a ritual to bring her soul back. However, during the ritual, another soul entered her body, the soul of the commander who once led his tribe. The old man reveals that the commander's soul has been seeking revenge for years and wants to destroy the family responsible for wiping out his tribe, Trey's family. Now, both Zoe's and the commander's enemies are the same. He also warns Zoe that her body is decaying and time is running out, so they must act quickly. Meanwhile, Trey devises a plan to kidnap Zoe's fiancé, hoping it will stop her from attacking him. Zoe's fiancé, heartbroken and grieving for her, is ambushed by Trey and his gang. They beat him badly, throw him into their car, and drive off. As they're leaving, Zoe arrives and shoots an arrow into the neck of one of Trey's friends, wounding him. Trey and the others are shocked to see her alive. They panic and try to flee, but Zoe chases after them and jumps onto their car. She fights with Trey's friend, who stabs her multiple times, but it has no effect. Just as Zoe is about to kill him, Trey slams on the brakes, causing her to fall in front of the car. Trey runs over Zoe several times, but it doesn't harm her. Shocked and terrified, he speeds away to save his life. Trey and his gang take Zoe's fiancé to a remote location and tie him up, hoping to use him as leverage. Trey's injured companion, still in pain from the arrow wound, pleads to be taken to the hospital. He tells Trey that when he saw Zoe, her eyes were black, as if a spirit had possessed her. Trey responds, "I know an old man who lives near the place where we buried Zoe. He might have done this. Maybe he called a soul into her body. That old man belongs to the tribe my family destroyed." Determined to fight back, Trey hires a group of heavily armed men. Meanwhile, Zoe tapes her rotting body together, feeling both sadness and anger. Suddenly, the spirit of the commander appears, handing her two ancient weapons once used in battle. Elsewhere, Trey taunts Zoe's fiancé, confessing how they tortured her and left her to die. Hearing this, Zoe's fiancé is overcome with grief and starts crying. As night falls, Trey's injured companion decides to sneak away and drive himself to the hospital. On the way, Zoe steps into the road and throws a rod at his car. The vehicle spins out of control, crashing violently. Back at Trey's hideout, he warns his men to stay alert, but Zoe begins picking them off one by one. Trey soon discovers his friend's lifeless body and watches in horror as Zoe tears out the friend's heart and eats it in front of him. Paralyzed by fear, Trey runs outside in a desperate attempt to escape. Trey stumbles outside and sees a police officer. In a panic, he kills the officer and flees. Meanwhile, Zoe finds her fiancé, who breaks down in tears upon seeing her. He begs her to stay with him, but Zoe knows her time is limited. She must finish her revenge. She leaves despite his pleas. Trey, desperate for answers, confronts the old man and demands to know how Zoe came back to life. The old man reveals everything, including the fact that the tribe leader's vengeful soul now resides in Zoe. He warns Trey that the soul will only rest once his entire family is destroyed. Trey asks how to stop the spirit, and the old man tells him the only way is to burn the leader's skull. While this is happening, the police find and free Zoe's fiancé, questioning him about what happened. Zoe reaches Trey's house and discovers that his brother has already committed suicide out of fear. Soon after, the tribe leader's spirit kills Trey's mother before leaving the house. Trey, realizing the urgency, gathers all the skulls of the tribe he could find. However, the leader's skull is missing. Just then, Zoe arrives holding the missing skull. Trey is shocked and terrified. In a desperate attempt to survive, he grabs a chainsaw and attacks Zoe. During the brutal fight, Zoe cuts off one of Trey's hands, but he manages to stab her with the chainsaw. Despite her injuries, Zoe decapitates Trey, finally ending his life. With Trey's death, both Zoe's and the tribe leader's vengeance is complete. Shortly after, Zoe's fiancé arrives at the scene, summoned by the old man. He finds Zoe's half-destroyed body lying in a shallow grave. Heartbroken, he tells her, "I love you so much," before setting her body on fire. As the flames consume Zoe, both her soul and the tribe leader's spirit find peace, their revenge fulfilled.
And that's the end of the story. I hope you liked it. Comment down below what movies do you like us to recap next. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.